A good UX leader needs to understand how people think, feel, perceive, and react, and then use that knowledge to deliver suitable products. To do this, you need some understanding of the human psyche, which remains at the heart of almost every decision people make. Recognizing this psychology and applying it to design is crucial if UX leaders hope to get desired results. If I had a penny for every time someone called end users dumb, stupid, well, never mind. I have on multiple occasions heard the need to simplify application design or interface design so even children may work with them. Better still, test them with your mothers, as some say. I feel the problem with this approach is we do away with the psychology that is required in achieving a great user experience. Let's look at the psychology of attention. Simply put, attention is our ability to notice something or someone based on different stimuli. Whether we want to deal with a situation or ignore it depends on our attention. While we focus our attention in some instances, in some others it works subconsciously. By understanding the psychology of attention, we can find ourselves in a better position to deal with mechanisms of perception. Then, we determine how to create consistent behavior. We address both spatial and feature-based attention. Much of what the human brain processes happens subconsciously. Factors that people are not even aware of can affect their behavior. While we might expect our brains to always arrive at conscious and rational decisions, psychology does not work that way. The subconscious mind, after all, does not account for rationality at all time. The framing effect, as described in psychology, can bring about different reactions depending on how particular choices are presented. In a cognitive experiment, simply using words like tired and retired got even young people to slow their pace while walking. If UX managers can get users to commit to a small action like signing up for a newsletter, it increases the likelihood of their committing to larger actions like subscribing to a service later. With empathy, we feel better equipped at putting ourselves in someone else's shoes if we understand his or her psyche, as it puts us in a better position to provide a solution. Empathy plays a crucial role in UX design because if you're not in sync with your end users, there is little chance that you will understand their needs or meet their expectations. The user experience in any such scenario will be bad to terrible. By understanding the psychology of users, we can take measures to address their pain points. Getting an insight into human behavior and motivating factors gives us the ability to add more value to our UX offerings. When we fail to understand and apply user psychology, UX becomes no more than a commodity where good designs remain few and far between. The main goal is to understand who your subjects are and what drives their behavior. All too often, UX is confused with usability, which describes to some extent how easy a product is to use, and it is true that UX as a discipline began with usability. However, UX has grown to accommodate more than usability, and it's important to pay attention to all facets of the user experience in order to deliver successful products to market. There are 7 factors that describe user experience, according to Peter Morville, a pioneer in the UX field, who has written several best-selling books and advises many Fortune 500 companies on user experience. Those 7 factors are: it needs to be useful, usable, findable, credible, desirable, accessible, and valuable. Let's take a look at each factor in turn and what it means for the overall user experience. So let's look at useful first. If a product isn't useful to someone, why would you want to bring it to market? That's the big question. If it has no purpose, it is unlikely to be able to compete for attention alongside a market that's already full of purposeful and useful products. It's worth noting, though, that useful is in the eye of the beholder, and things can be deemed useful if they deliver non-practical benefits, such as maybe it's just fun or it's beautiful to look at, that aesthetic appeal. Thus, a computer game or sculpture may be deemed useful even if they don't enable a user to accomplish a goal that others might find meaningful. Is a product usable? Usability is concerned with enabling users to effectively and efficiently achieve their end objective with a product. For instance, a computer game which has 3 sets of control pads is not very usable to most people. We only have 2 hands, and so 3 sets of controls would be pretty much impossible for us to deal with. So products can succeed if they're not usable, but they are less likely to do so. Poor usability is often associated with the very first generation of a product. Think of the first generation of MP3 players. The Microsoft Zune would be a great example. The Zune lost market share because people felt that the iPod, which came along later, was a more usable product when it was launched. The iPod wasn't the first MP3 player, but it was the very first truly usable MP3 player. Is it findable? Findable refers to the idea that the product must be easy to find, and in the instance of digital and information products, that the content within them must be easy to find too. If you can't find a product, you're not going to buy it, and that is true for all potential users of that product. If you picked up a newspaper and all the stories within it were allocated page space at random rather than being organized into sections such as sports, entertainment, business, etc., you would probably find reading the newspaper a very frustrating experience. Findability is vital to the user experience of many products. Randall Terry said, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." Today's users aren't going to give you a second chance to fool them. There are plenty of options in nearly every field for them to choose a credible product provider. Credibility relates to the ability of the user to trust in the product that you've provided. Not just that it does the job that it is supposed to do, but that it will last for a reasonable amount of time and that the information provided with it is accurate and fit for purpose. It's nearly impossible to deliver a user experience if the user thinks the product creator is lying, a clown with bad intentions. They'll take their business elsewhere instead. And so you'll lose market share, or your product will fail, or your website will fail because it loses its credibility. Is what you're producing desirable? Let's look at an example. Skoda and Porsche both make cars. They are to some extent both useful, usable, findable, accessible, credible, and valuable, but Porsche is obviously a much more desirable car than a Skoda. This isn't to say that Skoda is undesirable. They have sold a lot of cars under that brand, but given a chance of a new Porsche or a new Skoda for free, most people I think are going to opt for the Porsche. So desirability is conveyed in design through branding, image, identity, aesthetics, and emotional design. The more desirable a product is, the more likely it is that the user who has it will brag about it and create desire in other users. Is a product accessible? Sadly, accessibility often gets lost in the mix when creating user experience. Accessibility is about providing an experience which can be accessed by users of a full range of abilities. This includes those who are disabled in some respects, such as hearing loss, impaired vision, motion impaired, or learning impaired. Design for accessibility is often seen by companies as a waste of money because the impression is that people with disabilities make up a small segment of the population. In fact, in the United States, at least 19% of people have a disability according to the census data, and it's likely that this number is higher in less developed nations. That's 1 in 5 people in the audience for your product that may not be able to use it if it's not accessible, or 20% of your total market. It's also worth remembering that when you design for accessibility, you will often find that you create products that are easier for everyone to use, not just those with disabilities. Don't neglect accessibility in the user experience. Finally, accessible design is now a legal obligation in many jurisdictions, including the EU and the United States, and failure to deliver it may result in fines. And finally, is it valuable? The product must deliver value. It must deliver value to the business which creates it and to the user who buys or uses it. Without value, it is likely that any initial success of a product will eventually be undermined. Designers should bear in mind that value is one of the key influences on purchasing decisions. A $100 product that solves a $10,000 problem is one that is likely to succeed. A $10,000 product that solves a $100 problem is much less likely to do so. So, the success of a product depends on more than utility and usability alone. products which are usable, useful, findable, accessible, credible, valuable, and desirable are much more likely to succeed in the marketplace. So let's talk about the 5 characteristics of usable products. Usability and user experience are not the same thing. The usability of a product is a crucial part that shapes its UX and so falls under the umbrella of UX. While many might think that usability is solely about the ease of use of a product, it actually involves a great deal more than that. So let's find out more about usability and be absolutely certain about the nature of this very fundamental building block of our craft. So the ISO, or International Standards Organization 9421-11, which is standard on usability, describes the extent to which a product can be used by specified users to achieve specified goals with effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction in a specified context of use. So this is the ergonomics of human system interaction as an international standard. So usability is more than just about whether users can perform tasks easily or ease of use. It also deals with user satisfaction. For a website to be usable, it has to be engaging and aesthetically pleasing as well. So why does usability matter? Before we dive deeper into what usability entails, we need to address the importance of usability because it matters. Because if users cannot achieve their goals efficiently, effectively, and in a satisfactory manner, they're likely to seek an alternative solution to reach their goals. And for websites and apps, alternative solutions are out there. They're abundant. So quite simply, if your product is not usable, its UX will be bad, and users will leave you for your competitors. Given that, designers looking to develop products with longevity need to ensure that those products are usable or risk losing users to their competitors. In fact, a 2015 joint research project by Huff Industrial Marketing, Co-Marketing, and BuyerZone on business-to-business web users showed that 46% of users leave a website because they can't tell what the company does. A very ineffective message. It's a lack of effective messaging. 44% of users leave due to lack of contact information, and 37% of users leave due to poor design or navigation. This goes to show the potential harm bad usability can bring to your website. So usability is the outcome of a user-centered design process. That's a process which examines how and why a user will adopt a product and seeks to evaluate that use. That process is an iterative one and seeks to continuously improve following each evaluation cycle of the product. In 2001, Whitney Quisenberry, she's a UX usability expert and former president of the Usability Professionals Association, or UXPA, offered 5 criteria that a product must meet to be usable. It needs to have effectiveness, efficiency, engagingness, error tolerance, and ease of learning. Let's look at each one of those in turn. The first one is effectiveness. Effectiveness is about whether users can complete their goals with a high degree of accuracy. Much of the effectiveness of a product comes from the support provided to users when they work with the product. For example, fixing a credit card field so that it only accepts a valid credit card number entry can reduce data entry errors and help users perform their tasks correctly. There are many different ways to provide support. Key is to be as informative as possible in a very meaningful way to the user. You might also want to examine the language used in your product. The clearer and simpler that language is, ideally 6th grade level, we've always heard that before, the more likely that your information will have the right impact on the user. Using the right level of technicality, for example, reducing the number of technical coding terms for a design-focused website, also makes your messages clearer and meaningful to users. Redundancy in navigation can sometimes be beneficial. If users have multiple paths to their objective, they are more likely to get there. This may reduce the overall efficiency of the process, however, so a balance has to be struck. Next is efficiency. Effectiveness and efficiency have come to be blurred in the mind. However, they're quite different from a usability perspective. Efficiency is all about speed. How fast can the user get the job done? You'll want to examine the number of steps, or indeed clicks or keystrokes, to achieving the objective. Can they be reduced? This will help develop efficient processes. Clearly labeled navigation buttons with obvious uses will also help, as will the development of meaningful shortcuts. So think about the number of hours you've saved using Control plus C or Control V to copy and paste text. So as to maximize efficiency, you need to examine how your users prefer to work. Are they interacting via a smartphone or a desktop computer with a large keyboard and a mouse? The two require very different approaches to navigation. Next is engagement. Engagement refers to the level of engagement a system offers. Indeed, engagement has become something of a buzzword, but if you cut through the fluff, you'll find that engagement occurs when the user finds the product pleasant and gratifying to use. Aesthetics matter here. It's why many companies invest a small fortune in graphic design elements, but they're not the only factors involved in how engaging a design is. Engagement is not only about looking nice, it's also about looking right. Proper layouts, readable typography, and ease of navigation all come together to deliver the right interaction for the user and make it engaging. Looking nice isn't everything, as Wikipedia, famous for its ultra basic design, proves. Next is error tolerance. It seems unlikely that, for any degree of complexity, you can completely eliminate errors in products. In particular, digital products may be error-prone because of the ecosystem in which they dwell. It's an ecosystem that's beyond our control as designers. However, the next best thing is to minimize errors from occurring and to ensure that a user can easily recover from an error and get back to what he or she was doing. This is error tolerance. Promoting error tolerance requires a couple of things. Restricting opportunities to do the wrong thing. So you make links and buttons clear and distinct. Keep language clear and simple. Don't use jargon unless absolutely necessary. And keep dependencies in forms or actions together. Limit options to correct choices if you can, and give examples and support when asking people to provide data. Offering the opportunity to redo. Give users a way to reset when they've just done something and they have to go back and start all over again. Assume everyone is going to do things you don't expect them to do. People are unpredictable. Then either facilitate that or offer advice support to get them back on the right path. And finally, ease of learning. If you want a product to be used regularly, then you want the users to be able to learn the product easily, so that when they use it again, it comes as second nature. You also need to accommodate ease of learning when releasing new functionality and features. Otherwise, a familiar and happy user quickly becomes frustrated with your latest release. This is something that tends to happen a lot on social networks. So whenever a new set of features is released, they tend to be greeted with howls of outrage from comfortable users, even if they're better than the old features. And this is true even when the new features are also easy to learn. Facebook switched to the timeline format back in 2012 after giving users months to shift from the previous format, offered a really good prime example of this curious reaction from some users. So the best way to support ease of learning is to design systems that match a user's existing mental models. A mental model is simply a representation of something in the real world and how it is done from the user's perspective. It's why virtual buttons look a lot like real buttons. We know that we push buttons. The form elicits the appropriate action in the user, hence making it easy to learn. So we can kind of look at this as a formula. Utility plus usability equals usefulness. So when you're designing for usability, it's important to think about utility too. While usability is concerned with making functions easy and pleasant to use, utility is about providing functions that users need in the first place. Only when usability is combined with utility do products become useful to their users. A mobile payment app could provide the most usable feature of adding the people around you on Facebook, but because most users of that app would need that feature, it's going to be useless to them. All your effort towards building the most user-friendly feature could go to waste if that feature isn't needed. Usability is more than just ease of use. You need to ensure designs are efficient, effective, engaging, easy to learn, and error tolerant if you want them to succeed. Of course, there are limitations on the value of usability, and sometimes trade-offs have to be made to ensure economic viability, for example. However, when there is no such conflict, usability should always be the priority.